maybe have an opinion about how inflation works. Right? Why is it that people who have no fucking clue suddenly want to have an opinion about inflation? They don't know anything about all of the contributing, like, they don't know anything about the elements in the equation, yet they want to weigh in on it.
We now bring you Enter the Freud.
This is for entertainment purposes only. It is no way medical advice.
I can't figure out why we all feel compelled to weigh in on subjects like the LGBT controversy. And it's like, well, and when I say that, it's like, which one? Well, you could say, why do you have to have an opinion about books that talk about being gay in school? Right? Someone, if you pay attention to the media or occasionally you get in a conversation with someone, and there's a weird thing, and I don't know when this occurred. I don't know when this started to become normalized, that we all should have an opinion about every subject that comes past us. It's like...
Totally.
Like, do you see what I'm saying?
I know exactly. It's totally true. And it's become really obvious, something about COVID, where everyone needed to have their stance on vaccines and their stance on social distancing. And then you needed a stance on Ukraine and a stance on Johnny Depp and a stance on gun control, dude. And like if you don't have a stance, it's like you're not a human being.
But so what the fuck is that? Because I think if we were going to figure out what are the things that one should have, like, what's the most important thing to do? Someone's going to say it's health, it's money, it's friends, relationships, whatever, right? Well, what if it's the ability to pivot and not feel sucked into conversations that have nothing to do with you, right? So yesterday, this guy...
You mean to say that Johnny Depp and Amber Heard has nothing to do with me? How could you say that? This is important.
Yeah, okay. I don't know what... Like, that's an obvious silly one, but what about these other ones that it's like insidious. It secretly creeps up, and then we all feel like, oh, we should have an opinion on it. And then worse than that, to go totally against my grandparents' opinion, actually say what your opinion is. Like,
right.
My grandparents never fucking say what their opinion is on subjects.
Totally.
That was like...
That's so funny.
Isn't that weird?
Yeah, it's so it's this generational change, because you're totally right. Our grandparents aren't going to say what their opinion is at all on anything, and they're especially not going to get into a furious argument, and they're especially not going to like sever relationships because of differences in gun control opinion.
Absolutely not. But so somehow over the past, it's only 2 generations. 2 generations later, we've somehow convinced ourselves that we should have an opinion on this. I was talking to this guy yesterday, and he says that he was talking to his buddy's girlfriend. His buddy's girlfriend says, listen, I don't think comedians who are white should make jokes about any other minority group. In fact, they shouldn't even make jokes about women, because particularly white men hold all the privilege, and therefore everyone should make fun of them because they have all the benefits of life and they never suffer, right? They don't struggle. Nothing bad can happen to them because they're in the ultimate position. And you know this argument, right? It's all too common. It's like crept into a bunch of different areas. But like in that case, why did the guy feel compelled to even discuss this further with her? Why didn't he just say, that's hilarious, you're funny. Oh, you're talking about that thing? Haha. Like, why is it that then he would feel compelled to talk about it later and say like, oh man, don't you think it's weird how he felt trapped and then like on guard that he should have to have a somehow weird opinion about that?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think it's like a state of consciousness shift. Like a few generations ago, our great grandparents I feel like their consciousness was just more directed at more practical everyday things, like farming or milking the cows or working their more simple job. And their consciousness was just more consigned to, so let's go back several generations, kind of before maybe even electricity. And it's just like your life was just like milking the cows or getting the food ready, and that's just what it was. And so your consciousness was kind of consumed with immediate life practicalities. And then as society changed, now our consciousness is consumed with this thing, and like, here's where my consciousness is. And here's like Amber Heard and Johnny Depp and the chat rooms and the whatever. And now that's like what I'm consumed with.
So I think basically you're saying that there's some kind of shift in the focus of what we do for our task to survive in technology. Is that an argument?
Well, just like what our consciousness is attending to.
Oh, okay.
What it used to be attending to was like milking the cows or food or the farm or whatever it was back then.
Yeah.
But you wouldn't bother attending to questions like what comedians should talk about or not talk about. It wouldn't make any sense. Just like it wouldn't make any sense for you and I to concern ourselves with what the salinity of the ocean is in the Red Sea versus the Baltic Sea. You and I aren't going to be like consumed with that thing because it's just going to be outside of our realm of awareness,
Okay. So that makes it super obvious. But so maybe you could help me understand, why is there a strange phenomenon where if you don't pay attention to the salinity of the Baltic Sea versus the Red Sea today, then you're a fucking crazy asshole, white privileged motherfucker, right? Dude, you see the trap? How the fuck did that happen? How did it happen?
Okay. Well, it's a good question, and I certainly don't know the answer, but let me just sort of, I don't know if this is playing devil's advocate, but maybe it is. Maybe if our great-great-great-grandparents, they milked the cows like this, and then one day a guy came and milked the cows like this, they might be like, what? You can't milk the cows like that? I don't know. I'm kind of being silly, but maybe it's true, maybe there's this human tendency to like see differences in this team, us versus them thing. Because I do feel like I saw some movie or documentary or something. I think it was fictional, but it kind of felt real. And it was kind of a reenactment, but it was like this, they were trying to show like tribal life like hundreds of years ago. And there was this tribe and they're just doing their thing and whatever. And then in the horizon, there was a sign that there was another tribe and they didn't know who those people were. And they all start freaking out. Oh no, there's another tribe off in the distance. Let's sharpen our spears because fucking this is dangerous,
What is the other tribe in the distance symbolize?
Well, it's just like other, like an other, and others are dangerous because they might kill you, Or I heard this thing, some psychologist, I forget who or what even field was, but said that our consciousness is really much more attuned to threat and danger than anything else. So like, for instance, if you're in a tribe, I think even perceptually, maybe the psychologist did some perceptual experiment, but that perceptually, our perception really spots snakes really well.
Yeah,
something about the curving thing of the snake.
Yeah.
Like we're going to be way more likely to spot a snake than to spot a pretty flower.
Yeah.
And you can just see how evolutionarily that would make sense, that if we're attuned and heightened for threats and fight or flight around threats or whatever, that our just psyches are just like geared for fight and defending against threats or whatever. And so in a day of this, and there's no snakes anywhere to be seen, maybe it's just like we're always kind of looking for a us versus them or a fight or something.
Wow. So if you're going to have if we're going to say that, okay, perhaps the most important thing in life is to minimize threat, reduce the amount of threat so you don't have to suffer. And then that would be really great, because I think we're well on the track to reduce the amount of snakes that are going to bite us. We're going to reduce the amount that tribes are going to come and kill us, right? Well, certainly us here in America.
Right.
Right. Here in the U.S., it doesn't look like we're going to be attacked and bitten by snakes right away.
But interesting to that point you just made is it would seem that way, but somehow we've created different new threats. And since there's not snakes or tribes that we need to kill, we might just start killing people because of a difference in political beliefs.
Yeah. So then it's like, oh, what's your stance on gun control? You're like, I don't think we should control guns at all. Ooh, don't you know? Don't you know what? Like, instantly get that guy to the firing squad.
Right.
Because he didn't have the right opinion on that.
Yeah.
Which, I'm serious, this somehow ties into what the fuck is actually most important. Somehow this does tie in, because alternatively, there's a cast and crew of characters who have perfected the idea that so ideologically the more evolved problematic view I see today is that we shouldn't do things that are uncomfortable. We should not do things that we do not like. We shouldn't. And so the weirdest place this shows up is you have a kid who doesn't feel comfortable in social situations, so he doesn't want to go out of the house. And he just says, why would I do that? It's so uncomfortable. He doesn't want to eat any fruits or vegetables because they don't taste good. So he wants to eat macaroni and cheese and pizza because those taste good, right? Yeah. And why would he, when he's home, why would he not play video games? Because the video games are entertaining and everything else is boring. And so then you create a human being that's what they do with their life entirely. Seclude themselves, play video, addicted to screens, and then have the worst nutrition on the planet.
Totally. And for some reason, I'm wanting to add another. You've identified a few key ones. I want to identify another key one that I think applies to even many more people than the overweight video game addicts, which is social interaction, going out and dealing with people is also uncomfortable. I think we humans have really sensitive social anxieties.
Yeah.
And it's just gotten so much easier to not have to deal with that. So let's just do online school for our kids, and let's just do online work for adults. And then I can just sit on my couch with a screen in front of me all day, every day, and I never have to interact with humans at all.
Okay. But and this is to follow the train of thought that we don't want to be bitten by snakes, and the new snake is a social snake that will bite us. And this, like, the need to protect ourselves from social alienation or embarrassment, right? That in our pursuit to, or I guess you said just social anxieties in general. We'll do that to say the whole thing, right?
Yep. To
protect ourselves from those social anxieties. Well, what about the ones that are coming through the screen, right? They come through the screen and they tell you, oh, get a better opinion on what's happening in, why are the gas prices $7.50 in California? Like, why is that? Get a good opinion about that. And then maybe have an opinion about how inflation works. Right? Why is it that people who have no fucking clue suddenly want to have an opinion about inflation? They don't know anything about all of the contributing, like, they don't know anything about the elements in the equation, yet they want to weigh in on it.
Yeah.
And it's like, once again, if you don't weigh in on it, there's pressure. So I don't think the system that we've evolved to seclude yourself is actually protecting you. Like, I wonder that it becomes like, if you're not in the real world struggling and fighting actual snakes, I think that the secluded world is way more fucking dangerous. And that's my own weird opinion, right?
Well, I totally agree. I mean, in our last episode about mass shooting, I basically concluded that it's isolation that is the most fucked up factor for us right now. And I believe that. And I think it's a large part to do with this. People we can choose in our luxurious lifestyles, we can choose the easier and easier and easier path. And I think for most humans, it's isolation, because I think social anxiety is a fucking actual real big thing for most people. And also just laziness. It's like they just want to like wake up in the morning and not have to like take a shower or shave or bathe and just like lay around in their apartment.
Why do you think people want to do that? Like really?
Facing other humans is hard. It triggers self-esteem, insecurities. It triggers shame. There's like work and insecurity and stress involved in interacting with people.
I know, but but I was listening to some fucking research this morning when I was on a run, and it was talking about there's a certain weird molecule that starts to be produced in your body if you're too alienated. And I can't remember what the thing is called, but this molecule, when you're isolated long enough, it comes in and it starts to cause a serious deterioration phenomenon.
Yeah.
Like a physiological, neurological deterioration happens. I wish I knew more, but fuck it. Apparently today you can weigh in just knowing a tiny bit of knowledge. Right? I am now an expert on stress molecules.
The isolation molecule.
Oh yeah, dude. I'm an expert in the same way that I'll tell you all about inflation too if you want to fucking know. Right? I can explain how particular arsenals that are given to Ukraine impacts the price of gas in California. I'll tell you all about it. Right? In case you want to know. I mean, it's going to be so fucked up and convoluted, but apparently no one cares anymore. This thing is starting to look more crucial to me. And when I say this thing, it's that fundamental pivot of, hey, wait a second. I don't have to fucking weigh in on everything that appears to be of the importance of the hour. And I mean that because like if you grow up in any other country, you don't have to pay attention to the rules and norms of that country to some degree because you're in a subculture of a different country. You can say, oh, well, I'm French, so we don't go like that. And it's like, whoa, suddenly you don't have to follow the rules? Oh, no, he's French, right? In the same way that for the past like 50 fucking years, there's been a global opinion that Americans, when they travel, are awful because they're so loud and arrogant, blah, 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 right? But no one fucking takes that serious because the people saying it are fucking French. And so we're like, fuck those French people. They don't know. They just say, la, France, right? Like, no one gives a shit. But then suddenly, and I promise I'm making a point this time, right? Suddenly, then when it comes back to things within our immediate echo chamber, then we have to, and I mean echo chamber is like our national fucking megaphone, right?
Right, totally.
Which is the media for sure. And that goes on to all of our devices or the newspapers or articles, which I don't know if anyone reads anymore. But that thing, that megaphone that's being announced to us, apparently we're supposed to have an opinion on. And and really, I think that there are so many pieces of information around the world that we can't pay attention to, and no one expects you to. Like, no one expects you, Dave, to have an opinion about the caste system and the way that like is destroying all these people's lives.
Right, totally. That's not important, but Ukraine and Uvalde are super important, and you better have an opinion on those or you're a fucking worthless piece of crap. But the caste system, that's not important. You don't need to have an opinion on that.
Yeah, why not? Like, your kid is half Indian, right? Why
Right.
aren't you supposed to have a really strong opinion about the caste system?
Right. My kid is half Indian, and he has family living in rural India who are affected by the caste system.
Yes, right now, right?
Yes.
Like they live in the caste system.
They're living there right now, their health and economics and well-being is affected by the caste system right now as we speak. My son's family, aunts, uncles, cousins, they're being affected. But that's not important. The only thing that should be important is whether I think Amber Heard was justified or not.
So obviously Amber Heard is a funny joke, but in a more obvious way, it would be like, hey, shouldn't you have an opinion about the war? But you can kind of get excused from the war because you'd be like, oh, he's a psychologist. He doesn't need to care about that. Okay, then let's go to a more core issue. What about LGBT rights and or abortion potential infringing
yes.
laws?
Or whether comedians, whether a white comedian has a right to make jokes about non-white in what way versus a black, what, like I have to have an opinion about that. That's way more important than anything.
Because you're a white male. You should have an opinion about that, even though, and then if, like right now, what we're doing is going to invalidate something. Someone is going to get stepped on because it's like, really, if we're going to say, oh yeah, fuck it, dude, you can entertain the caste system as your own hobby on the side, but because that's not really core to you. In the same way that you could be really interested in going against factory farming or potentially like animal abuse in shelters. Oh, you can have an opinion on that, but it's your side issue. Like this is starting to show us how there's core issues that are being fucking subjugated on, or maybe that's not even the right word, but I feel like they're hoisted upon us. And,
yeah, totally.
And based on your current position of being heterosexual or cisnormative or whatever the fuck you want to call that, and your apparent genetics, you have to have you have to weigh your opinions because of that. It's so strange. There's a fucking hierarchy that's really clear, right? Isn't that's really weird, because this conversation about what's the most important thing in life apparently is being told to you.
Yeah, by my community. It sort of makes me want to come up with some silly story to try to illustrate the psychology of this. Imagine some random tribe 1,000 years ago in, let's say it's in Finland, just because we don't really think of tribes in Finland. But so some random tribe in Finland, and in that tribe, the men, they're supposed to like have their hair long, because that makes you look tough. And then one day, this one kind of crazy young dude decided to cut his hair really short, and like the tribe was like, "What? You can't do that!" And then his buddy was like, "That's cool," so he cut his hair short. And then there was this movement of dudes cutting their hair short, and fucking everyone was up in arms. This was not okay. There's a movement of young men cutting their hair short. That's not okay. That's not how we do it in our tribe. We should have a trial. We need to put these people on trial and maybe kill them, because they're going to start a dangerous wave of revolution, and it's going to upend our cultural traditions.
Yeah, okay. Like that, obviously that historically has happened a significant amount of time. Right.
That's kind of my assumption, is that this stupid psychology exists in human beings, and we've been doing this shit in a million different ways. Dr. Seuss wrote this great book parodying this. It's the butter side up versus the butter side down. You know that book?
No, but that sounds great.
Where some people butter their bread on top, and then a different tribe butters it on the bottom, and they fucking hate each other, and they go to war over where to butter your bread.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I mean, that really helps so that we don't get all caught up in, oh, this is the real struggle of today. This is the struggle of today. But this kind of goes to this understanding of what a fucking human being is and what does it need. Like, if we were to facilitate the perfect life for Dave, right? If we're gonna make this thing work out perfectly, Well, obviously, a life with no fucking snakes is terrible. And I mean that like actually, it's like clearly you don't have to live around fucking snakes like some people in that weird there's a religion where people have that shit in church, but the metaphorical need for stressors to balance out your entire life. A life without any challenge is so screwed up, and I don't even want to talk about that. I don't even want to entertain how stupid that idea is, that we should have a life that, I just have patients that I see right now that their life literally has zero obstacle. And so then the fact that there are no obstacles becomes the greatest obstacle. They are going to grow up and become obsolete, insignificant, and like, it's so damaging. So,
yep. No, I totally agree. I think, and then this point you're making, which I think is really important in our time, it's coming through in other scientific ways. So let me show you, because it seems like it's kind of an archetypal thing that expresses itself in a few different ways. Like, exercise, for instance. If you don't push your body to a point of discomfort and pain, if you don't do that, it's bad for your body. Where if you push your body to discomfort and pain, it triggers your body to like trigger growth hormone, trigger regenerative healing things, and it keeps you young and staying healthy.
Yeah.
And then this one I just kind of connected it to, well, and there's the whole like fasting movement, and that what they're discovering is that if you fast and starve the shit out of yourself for periods of time, some people think 16 hours, but some people think you have to fast for days, you know?
Yeah.
And like that your body needs that painful, uncomfortable, difficult state. And the whole Wim Hof thing, I think, is the same thing. They think that if like you like go into ice cold water and trigger super intense, painful, stressful conditions, that then that's really healthy. I heard one person saying they think that's really healthy for like the dopamine regulation in your brain, that just psychologically you need painful, discomfortable shit for dopamine regulation in your brain.
Yeah, that's definitely important. And if we're going to create an environment where physically you're going to remove that from yourself, and then we're on this path to try to emotionally or psychically remove it, thus the movement towards safe spaces, and make sure you don't say anything that's terribly rejecting and or oppressive, overtly oppressive to other people, and even the distinction of people as a minority group versus the majority, that fucking preposterous hyper focus on your in group or out group is like who the fuck started doing all that? Because it's not helping us to then be like, okay, find out who you are within this matrix, and then align yourself accordingly. So then what this means is you're aligning yourself according to rules that don't have anything to do with you. They have to do with someone else's idea of the way that this hierarchy works. And as long as you ascribe to that, it is the fucking caste system. Like, that's the whole that's where this shit really implodes. Like, just try to understand how the caste system works, right? Like, it's so bizarre. All those in the caste system buy into it. Those at the bottom actually believe that they cannot get out of it until their next lifetime. And so they don't struggle to become anything more. And so, and you'd be like, what the fuck is that? Well, just look at what we're doing currently. Look at what we're doing. And I don't want to say that I'm even part of it. I don't even want to say that I'm part of this current phenomenon here in the U.S. I don't like.
What do you mean? What do you mean you don't want to say you're part of it?
I don't want to be part of further defining who we are, and by subtly paying attention to those who are oppressed, and then logging that in my mind so that I behave accordingly to those who are oppressed, and then rate myself as as not oppressed and then behave accordingly because I'm rating myself as, oh, I'm someone who's not oppressed, so then therefore I can go become anything I fucking want because of my privilege, and so I can do that, but you guys can't, so I'll just walk around and say sorry to everyone, or like, what the fuck is that? Other than, shit. I clearly have tremendous opinions about this thing I'm trying to not have opinions about.
Okay, well, I'll just jump in since it seems like you paused there. Okay, so if I try to summarize this point, that there's been a new kind of belief that's spreading, and some people, belief is too light of a word. It's like intense righteous dogma. But there's a new belief that like humans suffer and we should minimize suffering. So if someone's too poor, then the rich people should try to make them less poor because being poor is painful. Or if they're starving, we should give the people who have a lot of food should give them food. Or if they're feeling discriminated against, then the people who are in power should change things so that people don't feel discriminated against. Or if a person feels offended, then the masses should shift things so they don't feel offended anymore. It's sort of like this new cultural wave of awareness of people who are not feeling as good, and that we should tend to those people to try to make them not feel so bad. Yeah. And I feel like that makes sense, and there's truth to it.
Yeah.
But I just think it's gotten taken too far. There's the insight that like if someone is suffering or doesn't have enough food or is feeling discriminated, we should be aware of that and we should work to try to help it. I think that's true and that makes sense. Yeah. But I think there's a yin-yang balance principle that isn't seen. So it's sort of like the baby's being thrown out with the bathwater. It's like, yes, we should attend to inequalities, but you can also take that too far. I think that we haven't integrated this principle of help those who have less. We haven't integrated that principle with the principle of, but you can't help people too much. Life is hard. Difficulty, pain, suffering is part of life. And if you just try to wash that away for everyone, you actually end up creating worse problems.
That's such a better balanced perspective. I got so wound up that I was ready to just declare this is the episode called American Caste System. Like you're like what you just said about, yes, obviously we're in a movement towards including everyone and having a more constructive society. And as we're trying to do that, it's such a big project that it looks fucking worse. Like the more that we try,
because I think the movement of trying to help people gets taken too far. Instead of being like, oh, there's people who are poorer, let's try to help them. They say, oh, there's people who are poor. The rich are evil. Capitalism is evil. Throw out capitalism. Pure communism. Give the poor people the money. It's just like they're overreacting. I do think that there's a sense of, okay, things could be shifted, but then there's this pendulum swing overreaction thing where we're just demonizing. Like, I see these things where people demonize Elon Musk like he's the worst guy in the world and he's a filthy rich capitalist pig. Yeah. And it's just overly simplistic thinking.
Man, yeah, it is definitely, because if you were going to chase that thing down, if we were going to feel guilty about those who have more and those who have more should be persecuted, our entire country has more, like undeniably.
Yes.
The entire structure of the global economy is rigged where we just get more and more. And,
totally.
And so that argument falls apart horrendously, but that no one seems to give a fuck about that. It's still...
Well, that's a really good point. A really good, simple way of making that point I heard once is, imagine some young, super woke social justice warrior who works at a nonprofit, and they make $36,000 a year at this nonprofit. And because they make $36,000, they have to live in a smaller apartment and have to share it with one of their coworkers. And they can't quite own a car, so they have to walk and bike everywhere. And they can't go out to the nice restaurants, and they don't really get to go on vacations because they make $36,000 a year. And then they watch Elon Musk, who has 10 million homes and yachts, or this person driving their nice fancy Mercedes and etc. And they're pissed at these rich people. The fucking 1% needs to pay their fair share, blah, blah, blah. And they go, blah, blah. But here's the crazy trick that it actually really fucked me up when I heard this. That person who's bitching, they're in the 1% worldwide. Because worldwide, the income that puts you in the top 1% is like about 36,000. So that person who's bitching about Elon Musk and the 1% needs to further share, they're in the 1% of planet Earth. So they're the fucking greedy bastards who aren't sharing their wealth with the people in Burundi.
That is so perfect. That made this entire thing come full circle to the most important thing in life, is that pivot you just described. The ability to pivot, as anyone listening to that story of the dude making 36,000, there's so many traps in that. And then suddenly you're like, oh, the thing that he's most upset about, he is.
He's guilty of it. He's a greedy bastard who needs to give his wealth to the people in Burundi.
And so then if you were to somehow see that in the way that it's super easy to be like, oh, wow, he is also it, then how are you going to, this just uncovered another one of my assumptions, that if you knew what was the most important thing, then you would be able to relax. Which that also implies one of the most important things in life is knowledge. Like to know what one is supposed to do. Like that is an unbelievable thing. If you knew what to do with your day, like if you knew what you were supposed to do, then imagine the tremendous relief. I think it's really odd that throughout the day, most of us don't have a fucking clue what we're supposed to do. You know, you have to go to work.
So hold on. Let me repeat kind of the core of what you're saying, because you're moving into crazy, profound spiritual territory here, Porn. You said the most important thing is some awareness that would allow you to relax.
Yeah.
And then, so what that awareness is something in the category of, it's all okay, life is good, you can live life, you can live life in a state of peace. Like that awareness would give you that.
Like, because you know what you have to do, right? You know that, like, you don't have to go out and get in an argument with your family about gun control. That you know that's not what you have to do. You're like, oh yeah, that's funny, I could do that, or I could take that very seriously. But actually, what I'm going to do today is this thing because it's very important. And to know how that works, I really have this idea that at some point there will be enough knowledge that it will almost be programmable, like what a human being needs. And I don't think currently what we are emphasizing as the most important things are actually helping us get closer to facilitating the most important thing for human life.
Right. But so we should speculate as to what that is. If you knew the most important thing, then you would be able to act in a way where you kind of can like gracefully, peacefully, and contentedly move about life, right?
Yeah.
And that must be something in the category of sort of feeling loving warmth towards the people around you and the world around you, and to want to kind of like work with them in a way that like helps yourself and them just kind of live a nicer life.
Yeah, I totally agree with what you're saying. And I think that people actually believe that being in this kind of a argumentative stance that we're going to make change, we're going to make social change, we're going to make political change, that is what people think is going to help. And I understand that that's an important process, but the fact that all of us currently think we should have a totally inflated social opinion and an inflated cultural idea, right? I don't think all of us should do that. It's almost like I don't think all of us should have an opinion about quantum physics.
Yep.
Like I don't think all of us have enough. It's so strange. What a terrible end to this, because I'm now completely in the trap of just being like argumentative and judgmental. And I've lost any touch with the pivot to an awareness that would allow me to have a better life personally. In the way,
right. Well, you're trying to argue against the argument.
Yeah, I literally fell into the trap of the thing that I was trying to go, and then I felt the constriction. Like,
yeah.
I felt collapsed and like, I felt that.
Right. And so the way out of that constriction is to relax and let it go, and then just move in life just in a more fun or lovely or light way.